have you always been in Leicestershire, or have you lived in London at some point?
No, no. So I went to school in Loughborough, and then I basically wanted to work in the music industry. I played drums, and I wanted to go to to the lights of London. And I thought, how do I get to London? I thought, I know, go to university there. So I applied to university, and got into university. I had a year out in between A levels and did worked at a record shop, which I absolutely loved. And then I went to university, which was a poly at the time, and yeah, and then stayed in London till about 2006.
Okay, right. So how do you get into the music industry then? Is it kind of meeting people and just taking opportunities kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I was kind of driven, really. I just wanted to do it. I knew not many people had worked for labels and stuff like that, but I think it was in my final year, and I'd got a student grant because you used to get a student grant in those days, and I'd got some money left. And I remember picking up the Music Week directory and basically ringing up every single label and say, to basically say I'll work for nothing. I think I had 500 quid or something for the summer, and I was living in a student house. And basically every single label just said, no, no, we're not interested, blah, 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 until I got down to a label called Some Bizarre, which was obviously S. So I'd been through quite a lot of 10p's in my student payphone. And a guy on the phone called Mike Holdsworth, and he just said, do you like dogs? And I said, yeah. And he said, the guy Steve-O's a bit of a madman. And I knew a bit about the label. I mean, I loved soft sell. I was in when I was a kid, my first record I ever bought was Gary Newman. I was a big electronic music fan. I loved and I loved Gary Newman. I loved all that electronic stuff. So I knew soft sell. I was very excited to go. And I just went there as the label assistant and worked for nothing. And it was pretty amazing.
So what year was that?
Because
Sorry.
it was so I was it was about 1992, so I was in my last year of uni.
Right.
And I worked for Sunbazaar nearly every day during the summer. So basically at the time, Sunbazaar was in a 166 New Cavendish Street. It was in a Steve-O's house, basically. And he had an art gallery downstairs with loads of art from Andy, who is Matt Johnson from the other's brother. He's unfortunately no longer with us. And so it was kind of an art gallery downstairs, and then it was a record label on the next floor and the next floor up, and then it was Steve-O's flat upstairs. And yeah, it was just crazy. I mean, I remember doing, there was no, you have to remember that back in those days there were no computers. So
Yeah.
we did everything on phones. So there'd be like Steve-O in his office and me and Mike and the dog lying on the office desk all over the paperwork. And it was just phone calls all the time. I don't think we even had faxes. It was mad. So I remember doing press, which basically consisted of a typewriter and type up lots of press releases about the Some Bizarre stuff. I remember at the time, I said somebody asked for a discography of every single record that Some Bizarre had ever been released, and I asked Steve, and he said he hadn't got one. So I do remember going down to the archive, which was basically downstairs in the basement, which was very damp, and sorting through all of the Some Bizarre back catalogue and cataloguing it all, and basically doing this list of a Some Bizarre discography on a typewriter. I think it was for XFM or something, because XFM around the corner, or an early precursor to XFM. So yeah, it was how it was at the time. You just did what was needed to be done. But I mean, Mark Armage used to pop in for cups of tea. I always remember he had milk in first, which apparently is not the way to do it.
No, that seems a bit mad to me. Yeah.
Yeah, milk in first. And every single cup, and I never drank tea at the time, so every time I made anybody a cup of tea anywhere, I always did milk in first because of Mark Harmon. But everybody used to complain that my tea was terrible. So yeah, he used to come in, and Dave Ball and all the different bands, all different people who were on Some Bizarre and Matt Johnson, and yeah, it was just great. It's probably my favorite job in the music industry that I ever did, because it was properly DIY rock and roll sort of thing. And I remember babysitting the dog and staying at Steve-O's flat. I think my sister came down, and like all of the memorabilia from Soft Cell was up there, and even his curtains were from the Torch video, all the back drop from the Torch video and stuff like that. So it was great.
So it kind of like a good intro. Did you get your hands on every aspect of what was going on, really? So was it a good introduction in that way?
I don't know. If anybody knows about Some Bizarre, I mean, there were like, I think labels at the time. There was Some Bizarre, Rough Trade. Who else were the labels at the time? Probably One Little Indie. There were quite a few labels. I don't think there was a set rule for what to do. I think people just did what they thought. You know, the indie, those labels at the time just worked by the sort of skin of the teeth, really. It was, you know, they were just learning as they went along, I guess.
Yeah, and what type of music were you into at that point then? Obviously, like 1992, what was kicking off then?
1992, I don't know. I guess it was definitely before Britpop. I can't remember exactly what I was into in 1992, to be fair. I mean, I knew I bought the NME every week. I've got all them in my loft from whenever. A Melody Maker. It was just all the stuff around before Britpop. So there was probably Stone Roses and stuff. It was probably the early resurgence of all of that sort of stuff. A lot of bands from America. So Britpop hadn't yet happened. That sort of came in. So I went back to university. I carried on at Some Bizarre for about a year. I know they were running out of money, so I kind of went part-time. They did pay me in the end, and then I remember working at Miss Selfridge, the shop on Regent Street, doing the clothes, and then running off to Some Bizarre in the afternoon. And then in the end, they basically couldn't pay me, so I just said fair enough, and you know, it was fair enough. So then I looked for another job, and then I went on to a management company. So this was a management company run by a guy called Clive Banks. Now it was part of the Elton John management. It was part of John Reed's setup. So I remember going for an interview at John Reed's office. Obviously, if you've seen Rocket Man, you know who John Reed is, or you know, basically long-time lover of Elton John. So I went there, had an interview there, and then then got the job, and then worked for this company CBL. And we managed the Pretenders, Simple Minds, Mike Oldfield, and Paul Young. And there were some other bits and bobs. And I think he did publishing. Clive Banks was a plugger, and his wife was Moira Bellis, who ran Warner's, and his wife's best mate was Barbara Sharon, who was press for everybody like the Rolling Stones and just loads of people. So, you know, very well connected.
Yeah. So what was the job title for that? Sorry, music manager.
I was management. Yeah, I was kind of management assistant, music manager, trainee type job. You know, it was basically you as a in management you'd put together. I mean, they said I was PA to Paul Young, as among other things. So I used to do everything personal for Paul Young. You may hopefully remember him.
Yeah.
So I was PA to him, so anything personal for him, so booking his flights, doing his anything, you know. I remember I had to get an appointment to get his septic tank cleaned out. When his house got broken into by Gino D'Acampo, I had to deal with all the insurance. That shit. Yeah, thanks, Gino.
That's mental.
Obviously, we didn't know who Gino D'Acampo was, but I do remember all of his guitars getting nicked. And then Simple Minds. they had management, they had a day-to-day manager, but you'd be involved in tour schedules, you'd be involved in anything, and then anything that came in, really. Yeah, who else was involved? There was all sorts of people. I mean, it was funny because Elton John was heavily involved, and there was always calls from Elton John stuff, but I didn't like Elton John at the time. I mean, I didn't like him, but he was a bit uncool in the mid-90s. He was it wasn't like we were interested. We were indie girls. So basically at the time, it was around 1994, 1993, 1994. And me and my mates who worked there, we were all kind of into the new bands. And all simple ones. I mean, my God, they were so, I love them now. I think absolutely amazing. But at the time, they weren't cool. I mean, I made tea for them, Mark Harmond, milk him first, many times, but wasn't particularly bothered. Wasn't particularly bothered. Would love to meet them now. Would love to talk to them now. But time wasn't bothered. They were older guys. We were young. So yeah, we used to go to. So we were kind of like funnily enough, we used to go. I was just talking to my mates about it actually today, my mate Teresa, trying to find out a bit, trying to get my memories back on it, because the scene started. It was hard to know what started first, but there was a club. So there was a club called Smashing, which was on Regent Street in London, which was in a club called the East Club, and it was run by a guy called Matthew Glamour, and he used to not let you into the club unless you either were famous or looked cool. So it was a bit like the Blitz Club back in the early 80s with Steve Strange on the door. And then all the bands used to go. So this club had started, and there was that club and the Camden pubs, and like the Dublin Castle and stuff like that. There was kind of a Britpop scene happening in this sort of going to this club on a Friday night, and then when I do remember a lot of Britpop bands used to go there. I mean, every week when you went there was somebody. There was Supergrass used to go all the time, Menswear, Sleeper, Blur used to go, Pulp used to go. We went to a club night at Stringfellows, and I remember Depeche Mode were there, and Courtney Love was either there that night or on another night. It was just mad. It was great fun. And I was in a band at the time. I played drums in a band at the time, so I was trying to promote my band, and I was working in management. My friend Teresa met a guy called John on the dance floor, and basically he said he'd been in the Pulp videos. So basically the Disco 2000 Pulp video, all the boys in that Pulp video are it's John and all of his mates.
Wow,
so
right.
It's David and Aaron and Christian, and it's funny because we're all, I mean, after 30 odd years, whatever, we're still best of mates now and see each other a lot, and we're all late 40s, early 50s and stuff, but it all that big group of friends basically stems from that scene, and obviously the Disco 2000 video was filmed at Smashing. The dance floor of Smashing is the one in the Disco 2000 video.
Okay.
And I think John was also in Misfits by Pulp, and they were also in the Wannabe video, the Spice Girls video.
Quite a mix, yeah.
So, yeah, it was kind, as I say, it was kind of like a scene. So, and then from that scene, I remember. So we went to see, I think, a band called These Animal Men, and somebody came up to us afterwards and said, "Do you want to be in a music video?" And this was the same group of mates: Sharon, Jenny, Courtney, Teresa, John, everybody. And we were, John was like, "Oh, we're not bothered. I've already been in the Pulp video, whatever." But, we went along, and it was the Oasis cigarettes and alcohol video. So I guess at the time, maybe they kind of picked people to be in these videos. So we went along to the cigarettes and alcohol video. It's at the borderline. in off Regent Street, and they shot me for part of the video because I was in a band called Chicken, terrible name, and I had this T-shirt on with like a chicken, not a chicken on it, with like the KFC logo.
Right.
And I had to walk over there. To remember, I had to walk over to a male model and snog him. And we did all these takes of me going along and doing this model, snogging this model. It's funny, and I do remember me and my mate Sharon walked past Liam and Noel, and they said something like, "Oh, they've picked this video or something," because we had like short skirts on and boots.
Right.
It was funny. And then we were at the side of the stage when they were rehearsing, and I said to Tony McCarroll in between takes, because videos take hours, we were there all day. And I said to Tony McCarroll, I said, "What have you got on your drums?" Because he had some silencers on his cymbals. And then Noel turned around and said, "Well, why are you so effing interested?" And I said, "Oh, well, I play drums." And he said, "Oh, come on stage then, come and show us."
Right.
I mean, it was only a little stage. Remember, Oasis weren't massive at the time. I remember thinking, I quite liked the Blue Tones at the time. They were kind of at that level at the time. So I said, yeah, I'll show you. I'll jump on stage and play drums. So I went on stage and played probably about, I don't know, a minute or something, just a very simple drum beat. I think it was like Supersonic, and they jammed along to Supersonic with me. And then Liam came on stage and shook his tambourine. And then he said, "She's fucking great." He said, "Get her in, get Tony out." And guess what? Tony was out probably very shortly afterwards.
Yeah. You should have got in there.
Well, they probably thought if a female fan can jump on stage and play better than Tony, maybe he's not that great. I like Tony McCarroll as a drummer. I think he was a good drum, but I did speak to him at the video shoot for quite a long time, and he said, I'm quite a simplistic drummer." I liked it. I liked the early Oasis albums and Tony McCarroll's drumming, but there we go. But yeah, I did think the funny thing is at the time in those days, there's no video footage. There's no footage of me doing it. There's no photographs because we only ever had phones. We had like Nokias, and nobody ever thought to film. Well, nobody ever took a camera. Well, maybe you'd have a camera, but you perhaps wouldn't think to. You weren't snapping pictures. You weren't on your phones all the time. So there's no video. Luckily, there's no video evidence of any of this stuff. Well, not luckily. I'd like video evidence of that, but there's no. All the Smashing nightclub. We've got some Polaroids, we've got some stuff that we printed. My friend actually got married there. She hired the nightclub again because we loved it so much. And I've got loads of photographs of that. But yeah, it's a lot of it's kind of gone into the ether.
I'm just watching this cigarettes and alcohol video now. I think I've got to. You got blonde hair.
No, I'm not in it. I swear to you, I'm not in it.
I just saw someone getting off with someone and thought it must be you.
Well, maybe I could have a closer look. I'm pretty sure it was cut from the video.
Oh,
the cab driver swears to me that I don't know how we got into conversation, but he swears to me there's a picture of a blonde girl on the drums at some Oasis exhibition, but I've never seen anything. I mean, if anybody ever listens to this and has got some footage, let me know. I don't think it was me.
But you had blonde hair at the time, though?
I had bleached blonde hair at the time, like white blonde, probably in pigtails at the time.
Pigtails, all right. I think this person's got like a bob.
Yeah, I had a KFC t-shirt on.
Okay, I can't see any t-shirt. But...
No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. We honestly, I looked, the video when it came out to see if I was in it, but the scene was cut. Somebody's probably got the scene somewhere on some video somewhere of me going up to this model and whatever. But yeah, so
that's cool.
So yeah, it was cool. Enough though, I remember thinking at the time, it'd be really good if this band got big. It'd be a really good story if this band got big, but obviously they did.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then but at the same job around so a bit later. So I stayed there for a couple of years. at the management company. But as I say, we wanted, me and my mate Sharon, we kind of wanted an indie band to manage. So our boss Clive discovered this guy called Jazz Man, who was in a band called the Sand Kings, and he'd got a project called Babylon Zoo. And we were like, oh, this is more like it. They're a guitar band. So they gave it to me as a project. We did I remember going along to the Spaceman video shoot, and basically doing all the management stuff for the first sort of 6 months of the early Babylon Zoo time. Do you remember Babylon Zoo?
Yeah, I mean, that song was massive, wasn't it? And
absolutely massive.
I actually got into a bit of a YouTube wormhole not long ago of watching interviews with that guy, because it's a pretty fascinating character, isn't it?
Yeah, he's actually back. He's actually he's reincarnated himself as a AI character, and I think he's releasing new music. I didn't think it was real. It came up on my feed. I followed Babylon Zoo just because I'm being nosy. And then this character came up, and it was Jazz, looking like Jazz in 1996 when I used to work for him. And I thought, well, that's not right, because the guy's in his late 40s, 50s. And yeah, he's apparently releasing new music. So
all right, yes,
we shall see.
Because I saw he didn't he get into the film industry or something?
He did. I think he went into the film industry. I think he made a lot of money from Spaceman. I mean, millions and millions of pounds, because you did back in the day. You sold, selling however million copies of that single sold. He would have made a lot of money. And I think he went into the film business. I've tried to search him out, actually. I'm very friendly with a guy called Tim, who was also in Babylon Zoo. And I got back in touch with Tim, saying Jazz is back. What's going on? And we don't really know, but yeah, he's back. But it's a funny story, actually, with that whole Babylon Zoo thing, because obviously they were, I don't know how it happened. I think that the 12-inch went out of Spaceman to be placed for various things, or it must have gone out, but to somebody. But some video directors, I think they were called Vaughan and Anthea, I might be wrong, but they picked up on the Spaceman single. And I remember what happened, because they basically came in for a meeting and they played the single. My boss said, but you're playing this at the wrong speed. They said, this is no, you don't play it at that speed. You have to turn because obviously record decks have got different settings, and can't remember which way it was, but it was basically being played twice as fast as it should have been played. And the video directors from Levi's were like, no, this is the track we want. And we were like, all right, yeah, but we were like, yeah, but that's not the track. You played to the wrong speed.
All right, that's interesting, because I remember trying to play it one night. I DJ'd for a little bit, and I remember playing it one night, and it's just like, you forget how slow it is. You can't really dance to it, can you?
Yeah. No, you can't really dance to it. No. So that was a bit of a panic stations, and I think the management decided, well, what we're going to have to do then is play the song at double speed for the first 30 seconds or whatever, and then bring in the track at the regular speed, because Jazz was spitting feathers going, this is my song, I'm not releasing it at the wrong speed.
That's mad.
So yeah, that's the story of how Spaceman was fast and then slow and then fast again.
Oh, right. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, Jazz was how can I put it? He was kind of pretentious, I guess. He was, he used to come in the office with a walking stick with loads of pound stick foundation on and these hair extensions in and stuff like that, and talk about how he was going to rule the world and how his music was just so amazing. He was the next messiah, blah, 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 blah. And the problem was he just pissed everybody off in the music press. I mean, I think NME and Melody Maker and stuff, I think they just got sick of him and his spiel. He had the sort of self, he had the confidence and all that of Oasis, but it kind of wasn't the same. It was kind of, even more than that. And I just think it just sort of pissed everybody off. And then he had a follow-up single called Animal Army, which wasn't a big hit. And I remember the record company coming back saying, we had a mix and it wasn't too bad. And then they'd come along and it was called Animal Army, and they'd come back and they'd put loads of animal noises all over it, like sheep and cows. And I don't even know whether that had been released, but I remember me and my mates in the office just pissing ourselves about what they'd done to this track. So yeah, and obviously he sort of, the album wasn't massive, and Babylon Zoo kind of became kind of a one-hit wonder. I don't think that was ever the intention, but that kind of. But yeah,
was it always,
people still know it.
Was he always like that, kind of self-confident, or did that come with the big single?
No, well, I think I remember him being a bit like that from the first time he came in the office.
Right, fair enough.
To be honest, kind of had a persona right from the start, even with the management team, which was odd. But
I mean, his interviews are hilarious. So I'd recommend anyone having a look on YouTube for his interviews around that time, because they are pretty funny.
Oh, they are. I mean, he did something. All of his interviews were hilarious at the time. And I think he had the piss ripped out of him on something. The Day to Day, was it called The Day to Day or something?
And Chris Morris.
Chris Morris absolutely took the piss out of him royally on this Day to Day thing, and I don't think Jazz liked that very much.
Fair enough.
So yeah, it was. But so my story with that management company was that I was also in a band. So, I mean, never work in the music industry and be in a band at the same time. But I mean, maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. But I was in a band called Fuzzhead, and we played. This was about around the same time, so we played in the city, and we were on the In the City CD, and we were actually quarter page picture of us in the Guardian. And loads of press. It was absolutely brilliant. I was in the Guardian, but unfortunately they chose a shot where I was sitting at the back, and because the way the paper was printed and I had bleach blonde white hair, you actually can't see my head. So it's just like me and this body and this headless person at the back. But anyway, we had a lot of industry buzz. I was digging out some old stuff on the band, and I think we played about 3 gigs, and a third gig, everybody was there. I mean, we're talking Creation Records were there, Paul Gallagher, it was who else was there? People from EMI, people from Columbia, Rough Trade, every single major label. I've got a note on my answer machine of when we came back from this gig that we did in the city. And it's every single label in the country, basically, at the time, asking us for a demo, asking us for meetings. We could have got signed, and we would have just got signed like that. But the lead singer and my old boss decided, in their wisdom, that they wanted him to be a solo act. And I mean, funnily enough, a guy called Blair Jollins, I've got in touch with him after 30 years last month. And he's apologized. He's like, I can't believe I did that. But hey, these things happen. So I went into work one day and they basically said to me, well, we've decided that Blair's going to be a solo artist. So the band is no more. And I was like, what? So my job now is managing him on a day-to-day basis of the band I've just been chucked out of. The band that the only other thing I wanted to be was a drummer in a band, and I've just been chucked out of the band. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I can work here anymore.
Well, I didn't realize that's what your company were managing the band as well while you were in it. Or you're like managing it yourself?
Well, we were. There was another guy in the mix. And he, there was a few managers in the mix, but I think the manager chosen was my boss in the end.
Right.
So that consequently meant I was in about another guy. Lenny was in the band. And he went on to be a big agent in London and work for a lot of the big agents and stuff like that. And I was chatting to him, and we were sort of it all happened really quickly. It happened in about a week. So I was jobless and bandless. And anybody who's listening who's been in a band, when you leave a band, oh my God, it's like a marriage splitting up. It is heartbreaking. But I forgive you, Blair. And actually, Blair Dolan's still doing stuff, and it's really good. And I might do stuff on the blog about his new singles. So there we go, all is forgiven.
So what happened? Did nothing really come of his solo career then at that point?
I think he was in a band called El Hula. I mean, he's still going. He's one of these acts that are brilliant but have never really made it. So yeah, I don't know. He wasn't massive. He didn't then go on and he didn't go on to massive things. Otherwise, I'd have probably had a nervous breakdown, I think. But hey, so then so kind of after that, I was a bit scarred by the whole music industry thing. I thought, I don't want to work in music anymore. I want to do something else. So then I went to an agency, temping agency in London, and they said, why don't you go and work for the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister? Right. I was like, yeah, why not?
Is this John Prescott?
Well, no, the office was called Office of the Deputy Prime Minister. Right. So yes, John Prescott was part of that department, but I was, the whole department was called that. So I then started to temp all around central government. So I worked for the MOD, I worked for everywhere. I mean, I wasn't doing anything amazing. I was like secretary, PA, assistants job. I remember sending me to Margaret Beckett's office for like 2 days. And I was like, you're expecting me to run Margaret Beckett's diary when I've not even been here a day? I don't even know where the toilet is. But yeah, I mean, I met Mo Molan. We went to some parties. I met a girl called Linda. She was mad. I mean, she was she just used to know all the bouncers and all the security on all the government departments doors. She was big mates with everybody. So we got into everywhere. I mean, I went to parties at the MOD. We used to jump in the cab if we'd gone out drinking. We used to go and jump in at one of the cars for the politicians and go up the road because she knew the driver.
Sounds like she's someone good to know.
Yeah. I think she lives in Brazil now. But yeah, right. So yeah, I looked around the government for a while, to sort of heal my scars. And then thought, right, I want to go back to the music industry. And that's when I went to the NME.
Okay. So so that's around 2000. So do you I guess that was a transition point, wasn't it, really, for like guitar music at that point?
Yeah, it was. I was trying to remember. I was trying to look at some old NME covers to see who was on there. It was kind of a lot of American stuff. So I worked for so there was NME and there was NME.com, basically. And I worked for Steve Sutherland, who was the editor of NME, but then moved on to NME.com. And I worked for another guy called Anthony Thornton, who was an editor for I think the .com side. And then NME itself, as in the mag, was in so it was a big open plan office, but then there was like a wall with like old NME in it.
Right.
Like a room, like a sectioned off part. And it was strange because NME, I was a bit disappointed when I first turned up at NME because it was kind of very corporate. It was a row of desks and, very corporate. And then where you wanted to be was in the door where the NME was, with all the journalists coming in and all the posters on the walls and, all the stuff happening over there, and the magazine actually getting produced and stuff like that. So whilst I used to go in and chat to the secretary Karen and go in and do various things that I needed to do, it was kind of, that was the exciting bit.
So what job? Sorry, what job did you actually go for? What was the title of that one?
Well, my title, I think it was PA. So as I say, I was mainly in the music industry, mainly kind of PA to the not really secretary, PA secretary, person assistant, whatever. So I was person assistant to Steve Sutherland,
right,
Anthony Thornton and Neil Robinson, I think his name was, and then I helped on I helped on the organisation, so we did a lot of the signing. We did like the signing tents. There was another girl there, Emily Wright, who I've actually been trying to get in touch with this week because I'm like, what do you remember? Because it's fading from my mind what we did and when. But the thing was at NME, it kind of started badly for me because one of my first projects at NME was to make everything more inclusive. So my project was to basically be not in charge of, but deal with facilities to deal with taking down this wall between the NME and NME.com and reseating everybody.
Right.
And of course, nobody wanted that because there was NME proper, rock and roll in its little part of the office, which wasn't like a corporate office. And they wanted to basically tear the wall down and turn it into the rest of the office, all corporate. And I had to reseat everybody.
How did that go down then?
Not well. Not well. Don't think a lot of, I mean, if people remember me from NME, Amanda Hull as I was then, I don't think a lot of the journalists have got particularly good memories because I was the one that pulled down the NME wall.
Yeah, were the old school people not happy about that?
Yeah, I don't think they were. And the thing is, at NME, there was a bit of a hierarchy. So you'd go to the pub. There was a pub around the corner from IPC that everybody used to go to. And there was a bit of a hierarchy. So the features editors used to sit on one table. And then the news editors used to sit on another table. And then the kind of NME.com editors, they sat on another table. And then me and the admin team were like forced to sit on this other table. And if you tried to sit with any of the journalists, that was not happening.
Oh dear.
Yeah, there was a bit of I don't know. I get it. You know what I mean? You don't want, they wanted to talk about music. They probably wanted to talk about what was going on with the mag and stuff like that. And they probably didn't want some crazy admin girls spoiling all their fun. But
was there a big drinking culture at NME? I don't know why I imagine there would be.
Massive. But... Yeah, a lot of it happened in the pub. A lot of it, I can't remember the name of the pub, it has escaped me, but people will tell you. They used to go, I mean, there was big drinking culture in all of my jobs, but yeah, a lot used to happen in the pub afterwards, most of it probably. And I mean, I used to continue to go out. I mean, we were out. There was a club we used to go to every Sunday night in Brixton, called the Living Room. And I mean, I'd always go there on a Sunday night. So I was always hungover on a Monday morning, horrifically hungover. You'd be out every single night.
Yeah.
But
I guess it's hard not to be when you're in an exciting office like that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it was exciting every day. I mean, there's a lot of, there was a lot of boring stuff. I mean, I remember I did all the invoices for all the writers and had to get all of that sorted and pay all the invoices and, a lot of travel and a lot of admin. I mean, when we did the festivals, when I had to, when we did the coverage of Reading and Leeds and stuff like that. Yes, we were running the signing tent, but there was a hell of a lot of admin to do. Getting all the laptops for all the journalists, getting everything sorted, making sure that everybody got everything. And when you had a good time and you went to the festival, I do remember I had to drive Queens of the Stone Age in like a little buggy round Reading. I do remember driving them around. Yes. They were lovely. And sort of other bands at the time, and you'd meet the bands briefly, you know what I mean. But it was work. There was still a hell of a lot of work to do. It wasn't glamorous, exciting.
So you were only there for 2 years?
Yeah, I was. It was about two or 2.5 years. So I was part of. They kind of overstaffed the NME.com part. I think they thought maybe the website was going to be bigger than it was or whatever. So they basically culled 50% of the staff. And it wasn't done in a particularly good way because they had Steve Sutherland in one room and then they had a guy called Mike Suter. Now you'll know him because he's on The Apprentice.
All right.
He's one of the interviewers now on The Apprentice.
Mike Suter.
Mike Suter, yeah, he was a big publisher, and he's one. You know, when they talk about when they get them in and slate them.
Yeah. Let's have a look at him.
Scottish guy. Mike Suter's one of them.
I know you mean, yeah.
Yeah. So and I'd kind of covered being a PA to him briefly when you know, the other secretary was on holiday and stuff like that. But anyways, at NME, they basically said, right, we've got this redundancy day. And if you go into that office, so basically the people going into Mike Suter's office were coming out, kicking the doors, shouting, crying. And the people coming out of Steve Sutherland's office were really happy. So when it came to my turn, I was like, I am not going in Mike Suter's office, because I knew I was going to get sacked.
Right.
And then the people in Steve Sutherland's office were fine. So it wasn't the best way to do it, NME. But yeah, we half of the people, basically a lot of people got made redundant out on that day, which was sad. I mean, you know, you sort of think what you're going to do then. But I mean, luckily at the time with the music industry, there was a recruitment company called Handle. And you basically could go into another music industry job the week later if you wanted to.
Right.
And because I'd got a lot of experience, then I just rang up Handel and said, right, I've not working at NME, where am I going next? So then they sent me all round. I mean, I worked for Virgin Records, worked for Sony, went to Warner's, I went to loads and loads of jobs, but can't tell you exactly the dates or anything because my CV is long gone. But I do remember, so around that time I went to work for Steve Lillywhite at who was the boss of Mercury Records at the time. So Steve Lillywhite obviously is U2's producer and the Lars, and I mean, amazing producer.
Mm-hmm.
So I was extremely excited to be working for him. And we got on like a house on fire. I mean, we were so naughty. We used to listen to music all day. I don't think we ever got any work done. Yeah, he was a great guy, really, really nice, really kind to me. And he said, look, you know about music, you know what you're talking about. You should really go and work in A&R. So I thought, right, okay, here's my chance. I can go and work in A&R. So yes. I did, but it only lasted 6 months.
Right. Why is that?
So, well, lots of reasons, really. I mean, so A&R was funny at the time. So I worked in an office downstairs. I remember I worked with so behind me was Def Jam, a guy called Semtex, who's still knocking around and does loads of stuff now. And Tim Westwood used to be behind me in the office playing Def Jam so loud you could hardly even work. And there was a guy called Richard O'Donovan in the end office, and I think he's A&R's Sam Fender now. And another guy called Chris Parles, and then another guy. I don't know, maybe I was just too distracted. Basically, at the end of 6 months, they said, we don't think one particular girl said, we don't think you've passed your probation. Maybe it wasn't that great at my job at the time. I don't know. I was probably out drinking every night. Who knows?
So what is that job? Obviously, I kind of understand it, but is it your job to get new bands and to look after them, kind of thing?
Yeah. So there'd be the A&R managers. So the managers would be the ones going out and getting the bands. A&R assistant would be doing all the stuff to do with putting together a record. So the sleeve notes, the coordinating the mastering, coordinating all the just basically all the behind stuff for like putting the record together.
Right.
And yes, our assistants would go out and see bands. And I would go out and see bands and come back and say, what about this band? What about that band? That probably didn't go in my favour because I probably should have just been getting my head down and doing the admin. But I was always, you know what I mean? I mean, even at NME, I was the secretary there, PA secretary. They used to be talking in editorial meetings about who should they put on the cover, and I'd probably pipe up with some band or other, and it'd be like, tumbleweed, it'd be like, yeah, you shouldn't really be inputting into this. It's not your job. But anyway, there we go. Yeah, so A&R coordinator is you know, I mean, you build up to be an A&R manager. You would sort of build up gradually to be an A&R manager, but I mean, and yeah, our job was listening. You know, the job was listening to demos, but I remember it was almost like if you had nothing to do, it'd be like, well, have you got nothing to do today? Do you want to go and listen to that bag of demos?
Right. Okay.
Not really the best option, but I guess the labels, a lot of the bands and stuff would come through mouth. A lot of them would come through, you know, press or recommendations or whatever. So these bags of demos were probably crap. I mean, I'm sure they weren't. I'm sure they weren't. I'm sure there was lots of good stuff in there, but I don't remember there being ever time to sit and go through a dustbin bag full of you know, CDs, and it would probably been tapes and stuff at the time, and listen to every single one.
Was it like, I mean, around that time, feels like it was a thriving kind of scene for guitar bands. Was there like a lot going on from what you remember?
What, in terms of, I mean, I guess it was, there always was. I mean, what bands were still knocking about? Who was on Mercury? Mercury at the time did a lot of the Fame Academy stuff. So it was kind of, I remember what we were dealing with. We had, they had quite a few bands, but a lot of it was, so the thing is, at that time, it was kind of like the pop idol stuff was coming in. So Mercury were heavily to do with the pop idol stuff. So I remember Darius coming in quite a lot. I had a right crush on Darius. He was lovely. He was, so sad that he's not with us anymore. But he was such a charming, handsome, tall, gorgeous man. And I had a terrible crush on him because he was so lovely. But yeah, it was all that kind of early, you know, Gareth Gates and all that, and all the sort of pop stuff. So I think music industry, yes, they'd had the guitar band stuff, but I think they were thinking, reality is the way it's going to go, and these pop competitions is the way this is going to all go. So we were heavily involved in all of that.
Okay, because I'm pretty sure the Paddingtons were on Mercury Records through Alan McGee.
Paddingtons, I don't remember them through the time. I think I'm trying to remember the big bands. I think Def Leppard, or something. Yeah, I'd have to come back to you on exactly who. Lamb, I think, were on Mercury.
But it was a Mercury like an offshoot of a bigger label, or not?
Yeah, Mercury was an offshoot. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
And I mean, I can't, as I say, I don't recollect exactly what bands were on at the time, unfortunately.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah.
but yeah, it was it was good. It was good at the time. And then what did it? I think then after Mercury, so obviously you did 6 months of Mercury, and then I went back temping at the government again. I went to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, and worked in private office there. And then the boss, the guy who I was working with, went to the BBC, and I was like, right, I want to go to the BBC. So I went with him to the BBC. So that was really good times, great memories of the BBC.
So you went as his assistant kind of thing?
As his assistant, yeah. So I went with him to the BBC to work on the charter review, to renew the charter review. I mean, that was great because going around TV Centre, and I mean, I remember you used to be able to go to see Strictly every week being filmed. And we got into Top of the Pops quite a lot. We used to go to Top of the Pops, not every week, but we went to Top of the Pops a lot. I saw, you know, there's Kylie there, and then there was a Top of the Pops like disco, the kind of club. There was a Top of the Pops studio. Then there was like a DJ and the bar, and you used to be able to hang out there, and people would be coming in and stuff like that. So that was fun.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. A lot of people talk about that on the podcast, actually. Like it's I think the Cribs turned it down at the time or something, but now it's looked back on like everyone wishes they were on Top of the Pops kind of thing.
It's a real shame about Top of the Pops. And I mean, I've put something up on my blog recently about The Voice and how rubbish it is, basically, and how Top of the Pops was a great filter for what was doing well in sales just to make it on Top of the Pops. So somebody like, I don't know, The Wedding Present, or somebody even like the Sex Pistols, Blur, all of these bands, because they sold enough, they had that appearance on Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
And so it's such a mixture. It wasn't an indie show or a pop show or whatever. I mean, it would be whatever was selling. So, and this is what I think is wrong with the industry now, because there's nothing like that. There's a lot of bands now, like the Lottery Winners, probably Red Rum Club, kind of, a lot of these bands have sold enough to have got on like this show that suddenly they'd be on Top of the Pops, and everybody in the country would see them. And people say to me, "Oh, young people wouldn't watch Top of the Pops," but I think people would. If it was only half an hour once a week,
yeah,
people
I'd
would
definitely
watch
watch
Top
it.
of the Pops. They watch The Voice. They watch the flipping, Big Brother. Why not bring Top of the Pops back? I mean, it's a. And I actually was at the BBC when they cancelled it, and I remember being in, taking some food in, and as I usually was, taking food in and coffees to some producers of the BBC. I won't mention the names, but there were the three people who basically were the producers of the BBC, and the conversation went something like, "Oh, isn't the proms fantastic? Oh, yes. Well," and I said to them, "Why did you cancel Top of the Pops?" And they said, "Oh, well, young people don't listen to music nowadays. They play video games."
Oh dear.
You know what I mean? And however many years on, 25 years on or whatever it is, and they were like, "Oh, well, actually, this is the proms, this is what young people should listen to and whatever." And you notice how much coverage the proms gets. Look at how much coverage the proms gets on BBC is beyond ridiculous. I mean, why we aren't covering bands or just bands, and there's no music shows anymore. I mean, when I was younger, we had The Word, we had the Tube, we had Top of the Pops. There was loads of music shows that bands would get on, and there's hardly anything now. Probably Sunday Brunch, but if you're up on a Sunday, you might watch it.
Jools Holland, I suppose.
Yeah, Jools Holland, but he's very artsy, and he's very, you've not got your guitar bands on there. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame, but it just means that there's loads and loads and loads of bands out there, and people aren't getting seen.
Do you think it's harder to measure? Is it harder to measure sales now, though, as like black and white as it was back in the day?
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. There is that. There is the how would they measure it, and actually, it is physical. Is sales of a single sufficient measurement to get these people onto these shows? I don't know. I don't know how they would do it.
Yeah, because you get a lot of reoccurring hits now, don't you? Like Mariah Carey's #1 every year at Christmas and stuff.
Yeah, you do. So maybe that time has gone, but it is just a shame.
Yeah, I'm sure you could find a metric that would work anyway.
I'm sure somebody in the know could find a way of bringing back at least a proper music show where literally there are just bands on and artists, and it's on primetime television or an MTV. I mean, what's MTV nowadays?
There's a lot of reality stuff on there, isn't there?
Yeah, no music on it. So videos aren't getting shown. So it's really difficult. But I mean, and it was around that time. I mean, talking about bands who have made it, like Adele. I mean, talking about me being in A&R, I was obviously not destined for it, because I did meet Adele and spent probably half an hour with her, chatting at a party. It was at the K West Hotel in London, and I was going along with my mate Ashley, who worked for Virgin, and we were going to a Just Jack party, I think, at the time.
Oh God, forgot about that.
Yeah, and I just was thinking, oh, I mean, I'm interested in meeting Just Jack. And then this girl, we sat in with a group of people, and this gobshite of a girl. I mean, I was just like, yeah, I'm going to be famous. I'm a singer, And I remember she had this parka on and greasy, ginger hair and spots. And I was just like, well, I don't know whether you are. With a speaking voice like that. I don't know. And I remember being quite drunk and wanting to chat to my men, and she knew I'd worked in the music business, and she was telling me everything. And I think she gave me a demo, but I think it didn't fit in my handbag, and I think I chucked it in the bin on the way home.
Oh, wow.
So obviously she turned out to be Adele. And I tried to recollect when it was, and it was her 19th birthday, because I remember she was opening presents and she was showing me all her presents. It's my birthday, and she'd lost this book. There was some kind of book with monkeys in it, and I remember her being really angry that this book had been lost. Where's my frigging monkey book? Where's me bloody book? She was quite scary, I seem to remember. But yeah, I was just like, wow. And then I saw her on telly, and I was like, oh, okay, it was her. It was that girl I met. It was that girl I met in the K West.
Yeah.
So maybe I should, it's one of my life's regrets. I should have, if I could take a time machine back, I should have said, yeah, I will take that demo from you, Adele. I will take it. I will manage you. Blah, blah, blah. And now I'll probably be sitting on millions and millions of pounds.
Yeah. That must be so common there, like in the music industry. In terms of misses.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, if you work for a label and you're going out a lot, you'd always get people, and can you have this demo and blah, 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 blah. So it wasn't like, to be fair on Adele, it wasn't like it was an unusual occurrence. You did have people trying to talk to you all the time, and sometimes you just wanted to be with your mates. You didn't want to sit and talk about somebody's band all night. It probably wasn't anything particularly to do with her. I just distinctly remember not wanting to chat to her and trying to get her.
I mean, she's quite annoying. Like, fair play to her, but
she was. I mean,
you
can imagine. Yeah, you can imagine. And as she was then, I mean, she's obviously beautiful now, but good on her. You know what I mean? Good on her.
Yeah. Her gigs are so weird to watch. So I was watching, where she like walks around and chats to people. It's all quite odd, isn't it? I don't know. Anyway, it's a different story.
I mean, I just think there's hundreds of Adeles out there now, and I think there's hundreds of Sam Fenders out there, and I think there's hundreds of I think these people are lucky.
Yeah,
there are still hundreds of people with talent out there who don't make it.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Fender goes completely over my head. I don't really get it. But
yeah, I mean, I like him. I do like him, but I think on with my blog, I'll probably see 3 or 4 Sam Fenders a week. On that come up on TikTok and come up on there's hundreds and thousands of people out there with just as much talent, but somebody's got to make it, and somebody's got to come through and whatever.
Do you think there's, how do I put it? Do you think the bar's lower now for getting somewhere with music?
I don't think the bar's lower particularly. I think there's just more out there. I mean, there's good things and bad things. I think the good thing is that any band now or artist can put their songs on Spotify, and they can be listened to by, they can put themselves out there, they can put themselves on Instagram, put themselves on TikTok, and people will listen to their stuff. Whereas years ago, as I say, you had to demo to a record company. You couldn't release a single without a record company, really, or a distribution company. So there were bands that used to play the pubs and perhaps had demos, but those demos would never make it to be recorded records. And people never heard them. So now there's more chance of people hearing them. So I don't think the bar's lower. I just think there's more people. There's just more out there that you can hear. Makes sense.
Okay, yeah. Don't know. I just sometimes feel like, I don't know. No, I can't decide. Can't decide whether I think that or not. Really, I think I need to listen to more radio.
Yeah, you probably need to listen to more. I have these conversations all the time, my neighbour, we were having a dog walk, and he was like, "Oh, there's no good music out there anymore. You know, it's not like it was in the Britpop days." I would argue that there is. I would argue that there are bands out there just as good that are not well known.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so that's the problem. I think we're sort of against in today's music industry. It's getting there. You see, NME has gone, and they could put somebody on the cover, or they would put somebody in a big feature, and people would say, right, you know, this is a band we'll go and buy, this is a record we'll go and buy. That's all gone. I mean, yeah, NME still exists, don't get me wrong, but there's so much. It's just a flashed up image on your phone now. It's just a flashed up review. It's just a 1 second snippet of a song. You've not got that physical magazine, or even going into a record shop and saying to the people at the record shop what bands are good. You know, that's kind of gone. So it is a shame, but it is the world we're living in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Kind of segues well into what you're doing now in terms of.
Yeah, it does. So as I say, I had to leave the music industry. I was working for the BPI in a government liaison role called Music Business Forum, which is interesting because obviously that was set up for the government and the music industry of the time to help each other. I don't know whether anything like that still exists. And then 2 days ago, I was managing, sort of helping managing 2 people from Adam and the Ants, Marco Peroni and a guy called Chris Constantine, who had a band called the Wolfmen. So I was sort of doing these 2 jobs. So I'd cut, you know, I was kind of getting to the stage where I was thinking, you know, do I really want to live in London anymore? Have a sort of do I want a break sort of thing? And then unfortunately my dad got cancer. So I came home. My mom had already got diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So he was her carer, and then he was dying basically. So I met a lovely husband here, and we got married, and my dad walked me down the aisle, and then I lost him about a month later. And then I basically looked after my mom for about 8 years and became a carer. Anyway, so whilst I was doing that, I thought, well, you know, I miss music. I want to listen to music. So I went to try and buy a copy of the NME, because I hadn't bought one for years, and saw that it didn't exist. I think they said there was some free copies somewhere, but didn't exist. So I was like, well, where am I going to find out about new music? And my niece said, why don't you look on Twitter? So I started looking on Twitter, and I did find a few bands, and I started commenting as myself. And of course, they didn't reply. So I thought, oh, you know, I need to be a blog or something. I need to have a name. So I just came up with the best new indie. I mean, it was, I thought, well, that's what it is. That's what I'm looking for. And it was available on TikTok. You know how these names are. And then I just started to, once I started blogging as a name of kind of a magazine-y type blog, whatever, then obviously the bands would then come back and talk to you, and you'd get a dialogue with the bands. And then I was able to share their singles and get interviews and stuff like that. So I've been doing that on and off. I mean, why you start a blog at 50 years old, I don't know, but there we go.
Nice. It is. I think it's great, to be fair.
Yeah, life begins at 50. So yeah, so now I've got my own little avenue, find new music all the time. So it's not massive. I mean, the blog's got about 10,000 followers overall, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and X, whatever. But the good thing about it, what I love about it, is that what you could never do back in the day was contact the bands directly. So I can put a single out, I can give somebody a single of the day, and then the band will thank you, and then you can get into a conversation on Instagram with the actual band usually, or the manager or the record label, and you can sort of have more of a personal relationship, whereas you wouldn't have been able to do that years ago. And then you can message people that you would never have the telephone number of in the past. You know what I mean? So you can sort of you can have conversations. I mean, I think I've had a few conversations with like Rusty Egan about the Blitz Club, and I've had conversations with other PR people who worked in the 90s and things like that. Some people back from NME, and you know, it's kind of good in that way. So yeah, so the blog. I mean, I've there's loads of bands I've discovered. I mean, I've done covers. I do some. I do like a little sort of cover of the bands I really like. So there's a band I absolutely adore. Now, not from the UK, they're from Baltimore, but they're called Super City. And these guys have been going 8 years in America. They've had 3 albums out, and they are absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the songwriting, these guys, I mean, they both write songs, Dan and Greg. I'm not saying they're on the Beatles level, but they're pretty, they're like, I mean, the guys, you know, one of them, the guys like Prince, I mean, they write all their own stuff. They're so talented. I listened to 30 tracks on Spotify, and every single one is brilliant and probably could be a single. Okay. So, you know, to me, so I've been helping them quite a lot. I've shared them quite a lot on the blog. There's other bands, Big Special. Somebody messaged me about Big Special. I think he was something to do with the tours or something on holiday, and then I did a weekend special about them. They're phenomenal. Laguna Goons, guy called Connor, he used to edit the NME. He actually messaged me about Laguna Goons, and we've done quite a bit on the blog about them. They're a brilliant band from Spain, kind of like the Baby Strokes, but better. It's kind of hard to explain. You need to check them out. And then there'll be bands like the guy called Joey Newey. He used to be in Kashmir, who's like a cult Manchester band, and he's got a new thing, Beam Noir, who are kind of more rocky, kind of Bring Me the Horizon, Don Broco type thing. And I've been sharing quite a lot of their stuff and following them quite closely because you know, I mean, then they're able to do it themselves. They're just able to they've got, you know, if you've got a studio set up yourself and you can record your own music, you can promote yourself. You know, you can work with blogs or work with, you know, other channels or whatever, and put yourself out there without anybody else involved.
Yeah. So what is your main source of new music then, would you say?
Well, lots of places. I mean, I would say Spotify. Spotify, I'll perhaps be listening to a band that I like, and then if I'm driving, then it'll recommend me another band that I've heard. So I'll have to remember to stop the car and go back and add them to the playlist and stuff like that. So Spotify is a big one. Obviously, when you know the recommends part of it, and I will be actively looking on Instagram and TikTok, and I'll have a look at the bands that I like, and I'll see who's supporting them, and I'll follow all the bands that are supporting them and check them out and follow them if I like them, and the same on TikTok. So yeah, it's kind of like just literally just seeing who's out there. You know, if a band tags another band, if the band says, you know, I picked up quite a lot of bands. This band Super City, they're involved in lots of different projects. There's loads of other bands that they're involved with. That's you interviewed the guy from Bodiga, so Dan plays with them. And then there's other bands involved with them: Adjective Animal, Outcause, Lunar Year, $100 Girlfriend. You know, they're all from recommendations from other bands.
Okay, right.
And then people will message me or phone me. People will phone me, or I get press releases emailed, and I have a look at them. Although I must say, PR companies sending lots of emails, I prefer it if people tag you or message you, to be honest, because there's loads of emails and not all of it's great. And then so yeah, just it comes from all over the place, but well, it comes from social media. Doesn't it? I very rarely get time to, you know, I mean, I don't work in the music industry full time, and with my other job, I don't have time to listen to. I mean, I love what Radio 6 Music do and all the radio shows, but I've not got time to listen to them. I don't know about you, but a lot of radio shows you haven't got the time to sit and listen.
Yeah. I feel like I should just put Radio 6 on during the day, but I should never really do.
No, I know, I'm the same. Or I listen to one track that I like, they played Big Special, and then I didn't like the track that they played after, and then it goes off.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's weird radio. You've got to sort of listen to a show of many artists to pick one, and then you've got to hope that the DJ mentions the name of the band before or after. And if they don't, and you haven't Shazammed it, you're in trouble. So I think I think social media is a better way of finding bands, and I think it's the future, really. In terms of where people find, well, I think it already is the way people find their music, but yeah.
And how do you think it compares then for bands, say like 20 years ago?
What in
terms of how hard it is, or the landscape
in terms
being
of
different?
the quality, or in terms of I think, I don't know, it's harder and it's easier. It's really hard to say. It's harder in the fact that there's no, as I say, channels. There's no NME to put you on the cover. There's no Top of the Pops to put you on. There's nowhere to catapult bands into the mainstream, but there is more opportunity for bands and artists to release their own stuff, release their own promo, make their own videos. I mean, there's bands making videos for nothing or for like 60 quid. One band I spoke to said they did it, the 60 quid was for pizzas, So bands can make their own, they can do their own thing now. They don't need that. So that's easier for bands, I would say. But the money, obviously nobody's making any money. All the bands I speak to, they nearly all got jobs. So you always have to try and get them on a lunch hour or on an evening or whatever. So the money isn't there that it was in the 90s.
Yeah. And then you got a new blog, is that right?
Yeah. So literally on my birthday on Saturday, I decided. So I've been discovering so many American bands, and I do like to try and keep Best New Indie as UK as much as I can. So although I have shared a few American bands on there. So I started a new blog. It was going to be Best New Indie USA, but I thought that's just going to be too much of a mouthful. So it's called Alt Buzz, ALT.buzz. And that is for USA music. So there's a few bands, as I say, there's Super City and all their sort of offshoots on there. There's another, a few bands I like from New York and stuff like that. And then funnily enough, Gordon Raphael, I just sent him a message. I don't know why I did, but I just sent him a message saying, I'm starting an American blog. Have you got any recommendations? And literally Sunday, he sent me about 10. They were all fantastic. I mean, what a lovely guy.
Yeah.
What a lovely guy. And so his band, he's sent me Cab Ellis, Shearer, Jade Tourniquet. So they're on there, and I will start sharing. But hey, it's got 20 followers. This is what happens. I mean, it's got 20 followers, including Gordon Raphael and the Clockworks, and about 18 random people. But this is
it's like got its own Instagram page.
Yeah, it's just it's just Alt Buzz. It's got its own Instagram page.
For it,
separate. Yeah, so it's separate. And it'd be great for people to follow. These blogs, they take years to grow. You have to just consistently post every day. I find if I don't post every day, I get out of the habit. So I do it first thing in the morning and I do it at night, because it's just consistency. And I have had times when I haven't blogged, and you get out of the habit, and then you don't do it for months, and you think, oh, I really must do my blog. You've got to make, if you don't make it part of your life, you won't do it. So, I just, it's kind of like, it has to become a habit. But yeah, I mean, I don't really care how many followers I've got. I'm more interested in who's following, and whether people are engaging with you and stuff like that, rather than the total number. A lot of people have loads of followers and they're bots or they're random people. I do feel that Best New Indie is quite well engaged, and I do get messages back and forward from a lot of bands and a lot of thank yous and stuff like that. So it's it's more about who's watching rather than the total numbers, I guess. But numbers are still, everybody's hung up on numbers these days.
Yeah, true. And are you just doing it for the love of it then, really, or have you got bigger goals for it or anything?
Yeah. Well, yeah, for the love of it. I mean, I can't imagine getting paid for it anytime soon. There's no real, yeah. I mean, I'd quite like to work back in the music industry part-time next year if I could find something where they'd let me work remotely. But yeah, it's I think it's difficult. I mean, you can't really charge bands for inclusion in your blog. I wouldn't ever want to do that. You know, and I mean, if a blog got really big, then maybe they could, you know, if your YouTube channel's big enough, then there's royalties, you know, this kind of payments to come from there. But you need to be hundreds of thousands of followers and stuff to get any money, and it's tiny amounts. So it's just a hobby, really. My husband plays golf, and I do music blogging. You know,
yeah, sounds all right.
It's the same sort of thing, really.
yeah.
And I guess for you as well. I mean, what you do is great. You know, doing the podcasts. You know, it's you don't do it for money, do you?
No, I mean I have monetized it, but it's not like it's small amounts, like you say.
Yeah.
But it's encouraging. But yeah, it's nothing. I'm never gonna quit my job for it, kind of thing. Yeah.
No. But I mean, bands never quit. A lot of musicians and bands never quit the jobs or can't quit the job. You know, maybe in the future. I mean, maybe we took, you know, perhaps 10 years, 20 years in the future. If we carry on, then maybe there'll be some money in it. But you know, I'll probably be retired by then. But hey, as long as I can put me in an old people's home, if I can use my fingers, I'll be blogging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
from my wheelchair.
I'll be podding from the retirement home. Yeah.
I know. And the thing is, haven't you thought about retirement homes? My mum's retirement home. They were playing like Frank Sinatra and small stuff from the war. I'm sure when I go into an old people's home, I tell you what, I want Blur and Oasis and the Streets and stuff like that.
Yeah, that is a funny thought, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's the music of my, you know, that is the music of my youth and whatever. So if they want to wake me up when I'm dribbling, they need to play me some, you know, Britpop.
Yeah. Can be a lot of tattooed old people as well, isn't there?
There'll be a lot of tattooed old people. So, yeah.
All right, great. Cheers for that, Amanda. It's been a good chat. But yeah, we'll have to.
It's been fun.
We'll have to keep linking up because, I like the idea of reviewing stuff and see how it goes. See how we get on, really.
Yeah, we just got to keep going. We've just got to keep going. You know, because there's too much music out there for it not to be heard. And yeah, we're not doing, you know, we're not the Radio One of this world, and we're not the Six Music of this world, but people will still see. And to be honest, you know, if a few people hear a band that I share and then go off and see them live and go off and buy their record, you know, go off and listen to them and listen to stream their album, then, you know, I'm happy. That's all I do it for. It's that's enough for me.
Yeah. Yes.